Gord, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. And tonight we're going to hit on a few subjects. We're going to talk about theft, prevention of theft, declining populations, and I'm going to talk about these little jewels right here. It's a nice organic way to treat your beetles, and seems to we're using it. Seems to be working pretty good. Mite treatments and combining a hive. Whether you should combine a hive or whether you shouldn't combine a hive. So I'll start with theft, because right now theft is growing, and we're doing a lot of cleaning out on our bee yards. So we're going through there and we're pulling out drone comb, old comb, and I haven't seen the problem that we run into for quite a few years. And I had to point it out to Stephen. I showed him a frame, and I was in the garage out here cutting wax out of the frames, and I run the knife across it and it went boom, boom, boom. And I said, that don't feel right. And I got to looking at it. It had all vertical wires, so it was bought foundation. And when Stephen come, I pointed out to him. I said, we haven't used vertical wires in 30 years. So if you're not experiencing theft, I'll explain to you what actually happened on these hives. People who are getting in beekeeping don't have any money. They will put frames and stuff together or take them out of their hives. They'll drop them into your hive, pull the queen and 3 to 4, sometimes 5 frames of bees right out of your hive in an out yard. And you'll never know it if you don't visit those bee yards and keep up with stuff. So that's how I spotted it. And I haven't seen that for, since I was working in South Georgia. But when you're going to try to prevent theft, you can brand them. I've got a branding iron out there. Branding iron doesn't really stop anything. It's maybe a way you can prove they're yours. But a lot of you people are going to start selling nukes. So branding a frame or a box is probably going to be out of the question, because nobody wants to buy your frames with your ID on it or your apiary number. The next thing you can probably do is do a system of putting your frames together so you can recognize them. I taught a student about 5 years ago, and he lived in an area where they was stealing hives pretty bad. I do not put a staple or a brad sideways through the sidebar. So he wanted to mark his in a way that he could recognize them. So what he done is put 2 brads side by side under the top bar. It actually helps hold the frame from pulling apart. I don't use it myself. I use 1 1/4 staples or 1 1/2 staples, 1/4 crown, and I put 1 in the top, and I turn my frames so that they're not lined up. So I can pick up a frame and I can look at it and tell if I put it together. Also, the wedge bar, the way you put your wedge bar in, never use staples, always use brads. And you can set your brads on that wedge bar in a way that you can recognize how you put them together. You have to get a system so you can recognize this stuff. And the next thing I'll talk about is declining populations. Right now, I'm hearing people for the last 6 to 8 weeks, my populations are dwindling down. I don't have any mites, they said. So the question was brought up, combining hives. The minute you tell me that you're combining a hive, it goes against everything I'm trying to teach. Bees do 2 things, multiply and store honey. So if they're not multiplying, you have a problem. You've been in that hive, you rolled a queen, or you have mites really bad. And doing sugar shakes or alcohol rolls is not going to give you a real accurate thing. You have to look at the bees. And for mite treatments, you might say, I want to be mite free. I don't want to use any kind of chemicals. Well, good luck on that. You're going to have to treat one way or the other, or you're going to lose hives. Now, in the springtime, you can keep mites under control by breaking the mite cycle, by doing a lot of splits. That's the most organic way to do it, and the less you're going to hurt the hive. Mite treatments, you're going to have to pick out the one you want. mineral oil, oxalic acid, or whatever you use, you have to do something. And as far as combining, I have not combined hives probably in 45 years. You can go through the winter with a fistful of bees and a good queen, and they'll pop right back. The thing that kills the bees is going to be your moisture and starvation. Those are your two things that you have to address really good. All right, I'm going to open up for questions, and you can talk about any of these you want. I don't know if a lot of you people are using it. We've used the political signs with boric acid. We haven't used those in 3 to 4 years, but we are starting to use these because these are so organic. These are the dryer sheets. They're unflavored. They're Swiffer sheets, unscented, and they're the kind you can buy at the dollar store. There's 32 of these for $1 something. Now what happens is the beetles get up in there, and you change these out every 3 to 4 weeks. Or if you've got a bad beetle problem, they'll fill them up in 7 to 10 days. You just pull them out. You lay them across the top bars, and it's very effective. I'm not making a dime on this. I'm just passing on something that you might want to try. As far as your mite treatments, we've already discussed a lot of different ways. There's people out there using a lot of different methods. If you're not getting results in it and your population is dropping, you better back up and rethink what you're doing to them. Has anybody got any questions on that? I know everybody's just sitting on the edge of their seat waiting.
First up is Peter. Here. Go ahead, Peter.
Boy, I get to go first today, huh? Just to add to the, you probably caught a little bit of the conversation. I had someone, come around my yard, my apiary these past week, and I've installed a couple of trail cameras. I know they're not the cheapest thing, but that's also an option, I think, because if you catch them red-handed and you get a good, a good picture of the face, then you got something to go on, So anyway, you were talking about winterizing a beehive. I have a couple of one-deep hives right now that I'm trying to figure out, what's going to be the best way to winterize them through the winter. They have a little bit of food, but not a lot. Obviously, I'm going to have to feed them through the winter. What do you recommend, Don?
Right now, where you're at, you should be getting a good flow for your goldenrod. Should be starting.
Yeah, just
so what I would do is concentrate on your mites. Make sure you got no mites.
Yep.
Because if your mite population is rising, what's happened is they're using honey faster than they can collect it to raise brood. And so the brood's picking up the mites and they're hauling it back out. So you're seeing a lot of consumption there, but you're not seeing population growth. So that's one thing I would watch right there is mite, populations.
The mites are pretty good. I had 1, 2. I've recently, last week, I started doing the oxalic acid again, vaporizer, and I'm doing the 3-week, and I think I got them pretty much under control.
Are you getting any kind of drop right now at all?
No, actually, I was very surprised. The bees I have, that's another question I'll ask later, but the bees are producing a lot. I mean, I'm having full frames of brood, and it's amazing.
Okay.
I got some really good queens right now.
Okay. Well, the thing about your oxalic acid, the vaporizing, don't worry about doing it with honey on or with open brood. Now, if you got really high mite populations where they're really bad, you could take a garden sprayer and spray it on, in a liquid form. I don't recommend it because you can contaminate your honey. You can also kill a lot of open brood that's not sealed.
Yeah, I'm not.
Vaporizing is your best shot. I'm
not doing any honey, Don, this year. I just concentrated on multiplying hives. I'm not even doing any honey. It's just doubling them, just splitting and just growing. That's what I'm doing.
That's good.
Yeah.
The next thing you need to do is get you a web page if you're going to sell, because you're up there in Connecticut, aren't you?
Yeah, I have a web page. As a matter of fact, I put a link to your page and to your YouTube there to use. So just so you know.
Okay. Well, the main thing is get some stock from me and then start advertising you're a student. And, I'll send you business up there. I get people from all the states wanting bees. There's a shortage right now.
That's definitely my plan also. I just, I'm getting the funds together for that. But what do you recommend? I mean, I'm going to have to do sugar cakes or something like that through the winter to
If you're
supplement?
doing sugar cakes, you got mites going in there, because if you pulled every drop of honey off that hive right now, when your goldenrod starts, you'll have a surplus of that even.
Okay. All right. So I should be fine then.
Yeah. Main thing is mites. The mites is going to kill you faster than anything else.
Yeah, no, I'm keeping those under control. I'm
Okay.
definitely on top of it. No
All right.
nothing around there. Yeah. All right. I'll ask the other question later. I'll let
Okay.
somebody else go. Thanks,
All
Don.
right.
Okay, next up is Donald.
Okay.
I'm doing the same kind of treatment that Peter's doing, the 3-week oxalic acid.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I started way late this summer. I started about 2.5 weeks ago, and it wasn't until I started seeing some deformed wings.
Right.
So,
It might be a while before you can see a turnaround in that population.
yeah, that's what somebody else had said too. So I'm actually doing on that one hive. I'm doing every 2 weeks, just because of what I read about the actual life cycle of the varroa and all that. So, but when should I take the last honey out? I know you keep talking about the goldenrod and all that, and because I'm basically in the same area that you are. When's the last time that I can harvest any honey or take everything?
You should be able to do it probably towards the end of September.
Okay. All right.
I mean, your area could be totally different than mine, even though you're in the same region. I could go up the road 5 miles and there might be a line across the highway where it's raining like crazy and I'll be dry, or the opposite.
Right.
So if your mites are under control, you'll see them. They're going to start capping honey. But a lot of times this time of the year, or when the goldenrod starts, you'll smell goldenrod coming in, but you won't ever see them capping it. It seems like they're just using it faster. That's what I would start checking close for mites.
Okay. And one other thing, I got a couple of hives that in my brood chamber, it's almost like I'm running, and these 2 hives just happen to be deep supers. The frames halfway down, there's almost a straight line across it where there's a honey band, and then right below it is where the brood starts, but it's halfway down. Can I scrape that honey to force them to move it up into the?
What are you using? You're basically using supers for brood chambers?
Yeah.
Well, it's early yet, so what I would do is, if you got another box on top of it, is stagger about 3 or 4 of the frames. Don't do them all. Just take 2 or 3 and put them up above, and put them, frame a foundation on each side of it. Same thing below. Give them a chance to draw some more out, or they'll start moving it up.
Okay. All right. That's all I got right now. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead, Paul.
I am having trouble unmuting him.
I'm glad you're at the controls.
Yeah, I can't unmute you, Paul.
I don't read sign language tonight.
We'll come back to you. Darlene?
Oh,
Go ahead.
Lord have mercy. Okay. So yes, I finally got my. Oh, hello everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Don. If it was a perfect world, we'd all be bored and we wouldn't know each other. And the day after we went in February 4th, we went to the Alabama Beekeepers Symposium. And the next day, my husband hooked me up with you because you were organic. And following you for 6 months before I got my bees has done me a world of good.
Now you can
Because
host the program.
y'all know better than that. Okay, I'm supposed to have my muzzle on. But anyway, thank you. So I started doing with the mites, because they drug out a dead body. And my husband says that my bees need to have brooms because they're such good little cleaners. All right. I have been with the mineral oil and the wintergreen doing the fogger once a week. And once a week, somewhere around the weekend, I go all the way down to the bottom. Now, I only have 2 hives. So I go all the way down to the bottom and I take the frames out. I don't have any other frames. So I take all the frames out and I put them into a new box. And I saw the problem with the hive beetles coming in. And we've always had hive, and I've had my bees now for 7 weeks. So this past, I guess it was 2 days ago, that went desperate times require desperate measures. All right. So I went all out with the sheets, okay, with these guys here to go in with the, okay. And because you know what they do? Unless I glue my political sign to the bottom board, they kick it out.
Right. You need to watch the video where I was doing those several years ago, and I also suggested a staple in them to hold them. And when I said they'll haul them out, people laughed.
No, it's true. But they're good house cleaners, right? And that's why my husband said all they want is a little broom for themselves. So I went through my hives last week, and when I was looking at them, it occurred to me, they're not doing anything. They've used up the honey. And I said, okay, well, what have I done now? I've only had them for 7 weeks. This was 6 weeks. I started them off on sugar water. They quit taking the sugar water. This was in July. They're bringing in more pollen than the law allows. Pollen all over the place. I went and gave them sugar water last weekend. They were starving. I was starving my bees.
Shame on you.
But see, didn't I ask? I wanted all my education in advance. Thank you very much. It's like, come on, let up a little bit. But anyway, my question is, what's the difference between pollen, nectar, and honey? What's the difference? I know that they can bring in pollen, but they're not bringing in food.
If you tasted the honey, you're going to have a smile. And if you tasted pollen, that's the easiest way.
Okay. All right. And when I started feeding them, now I'm dealing with the yellow jackets, right? So we don't drink sodas or anything like that, But every now and then I'll go get a little 1 liter bottle of iced tea, a tea thing. So I cut him off and I made your, let's get the bugs, the other insects. I walked away from it for 10 minutes, came back, and it had 5 yellow jackets in it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to my friends that are still drinking sodas and saying.
You mentioned about the bees being hygienic. I'm going to mention something a lot of people don't understand about when bees are carrying off the dead bees. If you sit there and watch them, they'll carry a dead bee off, and it looks like slow motion. You can see them flying off. And when bees are doing that, the hive is healthy. When you start seeing bees on the ground, your hive populations is dropped bad. Because a healthy hive will haul the dead bees way out, 200 to 300 yards, and drop them. And when they start getting closer to the hive's population is dropping. When you see them at the end of your bottom board, they come right to the end of the bottom and they drop them on the ground. You better check that hive because the population's plummeted fast. There's not enough workers to haul the dead off. So that's one indication. And when people say things, it jogs my memory. So I learned that a long time ago. I thought the bees was doing good. They was carrying dead bees out. Until you open that hive up, it's like a box of chocolates. You don't know what's in there until you open it up.
Yeah, very good. But I go down to the bottom board every week. I change out the bottom board and I change out all the boxes. I just don't change out the frames. I did have to buy, because I never was able to get a hold of any foundation. That's okay. The good Lord works in mysterious ways. I did have to get some wax right, just so that I could put something in there. I don't like it, but I know that there, and at least I'm getting more of an education on it. So that's good too. And I just can't thank you so much for allowing us, for you teaching us, because I can't imagine what it would have been like if I would have gotten bees before having followed you for 6 months, sir.
I try to teach you where I made all my mistakes to keep you from making the same ones.
Or at least when they come upon us, we know what we're looking at.
Good. I'm doing something right.
Always. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to try Paul here again.
There he goes.
There you go, Paul.
All right, I got bad weather here. My internet connection is lousy. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, but you're breaking up a little bit. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you, what do you think about the formic acid, the Mite strips?
I have never personally used them because when you run very many hives, it adds up mighty fast. For what you treat 5 hives with formic acid or Mite strips, you could probably treat 300 to 400 hives with oxalic acid. Your initial investment is what you're looking at. You know, you got to have a vaporizer or some way to get oxalic acid into the hive.
I just got my vaporizer. Yeah.
Well, that's the best way to go
I
with it.
scraped off some burr comb, which had drone brood in it, and I saw some mites in there.
Yeah. The drone brood is where you're going to spot them all the time.
Yeah, I think you've
Yeah, I lost you. I got real bad
down.
weather here. I can't even. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is Peter. Go ahead, Peter.
Oh boy, already. Okay. Don, so my next question for you is, I have one hive that's, that queen is just keeps on, she's super good queen. I've split that hive 3-4 times already this season. And I just can't keep up with it. I mean, the thing right now is has grown. I mean, it grows really fast. Split it 3-4 times, and right now I have 3 deeps and 1 medium in that hive because she just builds so fast.
Well, that would be the hive that you want to take, and if you're going to graft or cut cells, that's the hive that I would pull it for your stock from.
Okay. Yeah, she lays, the frames are like fully, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's probably the best queen I've ever had. Now, my concern is, I'm starting to feel like I'm going to go into the winter with a big hive. Any pros, cons about that? Is that a big problem going into the winter with such a big cluster, big amount of
Well, everybody's going to have a different opinion on that. My opinion is you have one big strong hive.
Yeah.
Where I'm at here, I take that same hive. I have a double deep 8. I'm going to make 6 splits. So if I lost half of them, I'm still 3 ahead. Numbers go through the winter a lot better than big strong hives, because when you have a hive that's too strong, too big, too tall, it has more cubic inches to heat. So you've got more heat loss.
Okay.
You got more places for critters to get in. Those are the things to consider. A 5-frame medium or a 5-frame deep with a hive top feeder on it is going to go through winter just as well. I've seen clusters the size of a grapefruit bust out in February really good. I've seen double deeps where they would struggle to get going because they've used their resources up. It wasn't a good queen. It was started out in the fall as being a good queen, but those are why I do numbers rather than try to do one particular or 2 particular hives.
So you think I should then split it up again? Just reduce it?
It's your hive. You got to make those decisions. I'm in the business to sell bees, so
yeah.
Right now we're selling bees faster we can produce. Any of my students that's been here 2 months ago would have a heart attack. We've got 80% less bees right here in this yard. In fact, we had people from Washington here. I had to take what I had here and go to out yards to try to fill his order. and we only got half of what he wanted.
So you're saying that the chances of big hives surviving are smaller than a smaller hive?
I've had less good luck with strong big hives than I have with smaller hives that you can control.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that come in, that you have to consider. A taller hive has got more wind resistance against it. It has got more liability as far as critters getting up against it. If you're in an area where you got deers or you got bears,
Yeah.
I've had a whole stand with 12 hives on it on a slight angle, and the deers in the fall come up and rub their antlers on it and push the whole thing over. So you got to go out there and pick them up. So singles seem to be a little more stable.
Okay, but cluster size, doesn't a bigger cluster stay warm better than a smaller cluster? No.
Not necessarily.
No. Okay.
No.
Okay.
I've never found that to be true.
Okay.
I mean, the bigger the cluster, you stop and think about it, they just eat more honey. So they'll have to move that whole cluster up or to wherever the honey's at.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So sounds like I got to do some more splitting then.
That's the name of the game.
All right. Thank you, Don.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, next up is Joseph.
Go ahead, Joe.
Hey, Don.
Hey.
Been working hard?
I work hard all the time. When I'm sleeping, I'm working.
Right. I got a question about bees, obviously. Feeding them.
No. Feeding them?
Do you feed them all the time, or you just feed them like when there's a dearth, or how do you do that?
I want to sell bees, so you fatten your bees up, you can sell them, right?
Right.
I'm not worried about honey. You hear me talking in my videos, that darn stuff's in the way again. And now I've got students that's starting to repeat the same thing. They're finding out lifting one super of honey all day long off of a box rather than singles, you can go through the yard a whole lot faster.
So, my wife's rose bush had a rose on it the other day, and I see that there's more bees in there than there have been. So I'm assuming that they've picked up on. I'm assuming there's a flow starting. I might be wrong, but
they're working just about year round here. I mean, I was out there early this morning. We've been rain almost every day, and I've got dandelions out there it's blooming right now. I haven't been able to mow my yard for about 10 days. It's raining every day. It don't dry out enough.
I started out with one hive, and I bought a few swarms, and I've got 30 hives now. I've split them too. Would you split them again at this point?
Why not? Are you in the business to make honey, or are you in the business to make bees and sell them?
My goal was 100 hives, so I'm behind my goal at this point.
Well, not necessarily. If you took every one of those hives and just split it one time, you'd be 60 right there. Use that honey. The more hives you get, the excess amount of honey you'll have. After a while, the honey's eaten away.
So you just constantly feed them, and then you remove the excess honey. What do you do with the excess sugar, or stored sugar, or honey?
Well, I'm splitting and using if there's frames of honey or partially capped honey, I'm using it to make splits right then. If we got queen cells. Right now, I'm not making no splits. I don't have queen cells.
Right.
So if you got queen cells, I would make splits with them.
So if you don't have queen cells, you would not make a split now, or
I would not make a split now.
Okay.
Because if you make a split now without a queen or a queen cell, you're looking at about 3 to 4 weeks before you're going to see any kind of improvement. Right. You're going to lose 7 days to 12 days right there just to get a queen cell.
Right. All right.
So, that's why, I only split when I got queen cells. You're not losing time. You're gaining every time.
All right. Well, I believe that answers my question. I appreciate it.
And next thing is, if you're going to split, make sure you look in your hives and you got drones.
Right. Thank you, Don.
Okay.
Next up is Donald. Go ahead, Donald.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm back again.
You got another lead question, huh?
Right. This is an extra question that I got a hold of. Now, with the splitting that Joseph was just talking about, and I know you've said that you will even split into October.
Yeah.
So, but that's only if you have a queen cells, right?
You got to have queen cells. The later in the year, you want mated queens.
Okay.
Right now, I wouldn't hesitate to do a 1 or 2 frame split with a mated queen. Because you don't have to worry about how many drones you got. You don't have to worry about mating. You don't have to be worrying about the queen returning. See, in the fall, your chances of the queens returning start dropping on you now because you got more predators out there.
Right. Now, yesterday, talking about the mated queen, yesterday I was going through one of my hives. It had been 10 days, and I guess I'd missed a queen cell. It was between the frame body and the
Sidebar.
Right. So I guess I'd missed it. As I was going through it, I saw the older queen, and then I keep going through my frames, and on the other side of that box, I found the other queen.
The mated queen, the mother queen.
Right. So I took the initial queen that I found, put her in another box, and she's in the first box now. So, or in another box. So I guess I just timed it just right, I guess, before they, split on me.
Well, a lot of times when, you catch them right, sometimes you can find the mother and you can find 3 or 4 daughters walking sometime on the same frame or the next frame over.
Oh, okay.
You did the smartest thing by moving the queen because, the new queen or the virgin queen, because you don't know if she's mated. The thing is, you need to shake enough bees and recognize if they're nurse bees or field bees when you shake them into another box like a nuke.
Yeah.
If you're not sure, the best thing to do is put screen wire over the opening and keep them in there for 2 to 3 days and let them reorient to that box.
Well, that's pretty much what I did. I said yesterday, it was actually the day before yesterday, and I just opened them up this morning and checked them this evening, and they're still all pretty much in there.
That's why we try to talk about everything. And I even talked about looking on them sidebars about a month ago or a month and a half ago. I said, everybody overlooks that. They're looking along the bottom bar.
Right. And so, but, and as far as winter time goes, I'm kind of trying to gear up for winter now. Would it be better to winter over on a 5 frame or an 8 frame?
If you got the bees, an 8 frame would do good. But if you don't have enough bees, a 5 frame, it confines the heat. They'll do better in a 5 frame.
Okay.
The whole trick to that is hive top feeders. And then just go out there twice a week and just lift the back of the hive up, the 5 frame nuke. If it feels light, put some honey on them. You could probably do your sugar water up to where you're at probably the middle of November.
All right. And then do honey after that, or?
I feed mostly honey after November 1st.
Okay.
If I got open frames of honey or frames that's partially capped all summer long, I'll use them. I've even taken a super of partially honey, no brood at all, just a super of honey, and make 8 splits on it.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm good again.
Okay, and Charles had a question in the chat window here. I put a link to your yellow jacket trap in there. Do you have any other suggestions on how to keep them out of the hives?
The best thing to do this time of year is have entrance reducers in. And if your hive is too weak, if you're running 8 frame or 10 frame right now and the hive is not covered 3/4 of the area with bees, put them in a 5 frame box. That way they can guard it and can, build up a little quicker.
Okay, and next up is Sally. Go ahead, Sally.
Thank you. Hi, Don.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. I want to show you that I did my bowl dipping, and I used a stake for the hammer. The stake stick. And my question is, it's time for me to do drafting, and I need to know where to get. I know I get the eggs, but do I get it from the bottom bureau or the second bureau?
You're talking about brood?
Drafting for the eggs.
Grafting?
Yeah.
Grafting right now, unless you're experienced and you got a lot of drones, you're not going to get results right now. Grafting, you want to do that starting usually in March, middle of March, April. Those are the months to do it if you're just starting. Your amount of takes will be a lot better.
So really and truly, I've never seen, no, when I first got the Hive, I saw the big drones, not the Hive, the packet of bees. There was drones in there, but now I don't see drones, the big ones. I don't
They're
see
probably run them out. How many hives do you got?
I have 5 in all.
That you don't even need to waste your time trying to graft. If you keep them in singles, don't put no supers on her, they'll make queen cells and then just take like a steak knife or a boning knife and just cut out a plug. That's the best way to go.
Well, because of what I'm saying, my next step is drafting because of the test. I have to know how to draft.
To do what?
For the school.
Oh, well, you must have smart bees then.
Why? No, I want to take the test. There's certain things that I have to know before I go take the test.
Well, you're not going to be able to practice on anything right now until spring.
Okay, so the best time is March.
Yeah, right.
And another thing, it was something else. The pollen. How do you catch the pollen? So a friend of mine wants some pollen, and I told him I heard of it, and heard you talking about it, but I don't know how to get it.
There's people that buy pollen traps. I don't believe in it myself because the bees are bringing in pollen to make bees. And the more pollen they bring in, the more bees. I'm not interested in selling pollen. There's a liability in selling pollen. There's not a liability in selling bees. So if the bees bring extra, you got to think about liability on stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, it was for a friend that she wanted me since I had bees, and I told him I heard of it, but I never know how to get it.
I'm not sure how much the pollen traps cost. I imagine they're probably $40, $50. If you think you can sell $500 worth of pollen, it would be an investment.
No. It was just one person asking me.
Do your friend a favor and tell her to go to the health food store and buy her a jar. After she eats a little bit, she'll have a change of heart.
Okay, I'd like to say congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you.
And also, I saw that you comment on the people that, not saying the right thing on the B channel.
Well, we try to keep it to where it's learning. People get in there and they think because they know two more items than someone else, they need to downgrade them. I don't believe in that. I learned by hard knocks, and I'm trying to save people, the hard knocks. So there's nobody that was born gifted that knows everything. We all have to learn something from somebody.
Yeah, well, I'm just happy you said something.
I try to keep it. I've got he usually runs my page for me. I've got another guy, he usually watches it, and he'll block them or kick them out of there. We want people that want to learn, that want to treat each other like human beings. There's no sense to tell someone they're stupid because you do this or you do that. We all going to make mistakes. That's just human nature. That's
true. All right, thank you. That's all I have tonight.
Okay. Next time you do your honey, don't filter it.
Don't filter.
Don't filter it. Why? You take the good out of it.
I just ran it through a strainer.
No, don't do that.
How am I keep the wet side of it then?
You pour it into a bucket, let it sit for 2 days. Skim it off with a large serving spoon, then put it in your jars, and then go back a day later with a teaspoon. Because when you run it through a fine micron filter, you take all the pollen. The pollen is what gives the honey the flavor and the goodness. You might as well just jar up sugar, mix sugar water up and hand it to people. Because when you take the good stuff out, the enzymes and things in that honey, you're doing more harm than good.
Okay.
That's just a suggestion. You could keep on doing what you want to do, but if you want to get a better price for your honey, that's what to do.
Okay,
And-
I tried it. I mean, no, I'm here to learn, so I'll try that.
I have never, and I've done barrels of honey. You know, if we do a 55-gallon barrel, we'll let it sit for 6 days and then skim the top. Anything that's in honey that's not honey, if it's sand, it'll go to the bottom. If it's bee parts or wax, it goes to the top.
Okay.
I've never done it in all the years I've done bees, and I've done a lot of honey. And you can look at some of the videos. Mine is crystal clear and never been through a filter.
Right, but there is one video that you, there's a screen or something that you use.
The only thing that I put a screen on was to do a dusting of powder sugar, I believe.
No. This on the homemade.
Oh, that's a capping cutter box.
Yeah.
Those holes are almost as big around as a pencil.
Uh-huh.
And it lets the honey flow through it, and then it has a gate at the bottom. Then you pour it into, you let it run into a bucket, and then you let it sit. It'll settle.
Okay.
Or, you know, it kind of floats to the top. That's the best way. You don't have to spend money to do good honey or do good wax.
Okay. I'll try that the next time.
Okay.
All right.
So Don, you wouldn't use the double sieve that they sell?
I don't personally do it because if you start reading up on it, it pulls all the good stuff out of the honey.
Okay.
Honey will naturally separate. I mean, the wax, no matter how fine it is, if you've ever noticed honey as sits, it's got like a white foam a little bit at the edges. That's the stuff that goes through the finest micron filter. If it don't have wax in it, it's not real honey.
Okay. Darlene, you're up next.
Okay, thank you very much. Donald Royer and I, we have a relationship with the people that we know. Small world, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And I want to know what Joe May was working on. And hello, Anthony. It's nice to see you. Okay, number 1, 7 weeks beekeeper today. Thank you. I saw my bees 7 weeks ago, my queens. Haven't seen them since. But that's the least of my worries. When I go through my boxes and I move my frames, I can listen to them and tell they're going, excuse me, our leader has been moved. Thank you very much. I take video. I videoed my actions every time. It's a world of information for me to go back and see that. The entrance reducer. Yes, when I started feeding them back again after I tried to starve them to death, I went ahead and put a reducer on so that it was easier for them to fend off the yellow jackets. And not to say anything bad against any company, but last week, the week before that, to the week before that, my hive beetles were getting out of hand. And it wasn't until I took, and I saw it in the video, where I took my top cover off, and then I had man-like top feeders because I wasn't able to get everything that I wanted to begin with. And so I was using them. Shook it out, and on the video I'm going, oh, that can't be all those hive beetles coming out of there. And I've spoken to them about it. And what Don said was that with the man-like hive top feeders, and I've gotten rid of them, thank you, I'm back to yours, because they're a lot easier to take care of. But all the way up in the top there, the beetles can get up there and the bees can't. You know, and the bees make the beetles' lives miserable. I mean, they will pile them up in a corner and the beetles are going, can somebody help us? I'm like, yeah, I can help you. I've got an entrance reducer here. I'm going to smash every one of you in the corner. Okay, so, but that was it. And thank you very much, Don, because every time I've asked a question, you've answered it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, next up is Ernest. Go ahead.
Yeah, Don, I have trouble with some of the bees that are real runny, like they're nervous. Is that a genetic thing with the bees, or
something is in that hive, or there's something disturbing them? Bees shouldn't get runny. Not unless you bought some bees from a Russian, producer. Russian bees are a little bit more flighted. They don't stay on the frame good.
No, I've seen several of them that had, open them up and they're just running all over the place. And then other ones are real quiet, just as calm as can be.
Are your bees bringing in any honey?
Well, if they're not, they're bringing in sugar water. So I'm feeding.
Are you treating them?
Yeah, I treat them with the different ones in our formula that you put out.
Well, you should be using oxalic acid if you want to get a good kill. The mites, the treatments for the mites with wintergreen and spearmint, that's to keep the mites from reproducing. It's not going to really kill mites. It helps keep them from reproducing.
I treat it with the oxalic acid. I've been doing that on a regular basis.
Well, you shouldn't have mites then. It could just be the time of the year.
I thought maybe it's genetics or something in the bees. They're just running on the frames and so forth.
No, I haven't noticed it here, but I've heard people that have that problem. Most of the time, it's a Russian type line of bees.
Well, they're just a mixture, I guess, of everything.
Yeah.
And another thing, when I split a hive and I put a feeder on it, it seemed like your young bees don't go up into that feeder and start eating the sugar water. Is that because they haven't been trained, or do I need a little bit of all kinds of bees in there, or what?
You might not have enough bees in there. If you're building a feeders, like mine, or just probably any kind of feeder, if you're mixing that sugar water up, I mean, they should come up and get it. Unless there's a real good honey flow on, they won't bother it then.
Yeah, well, some of them eats it, and some of them, like I say, when I make a new a hive up, and I put 2 or 3 frames in there, and shake extra bees in, but they don't seem like they want to come up and get the sugar water.
If they don't want to come up and get the sugar water, you might have enough open honey there that they're just working on it right there.
Okay, well, maybe that's it. Well, that's all I have for now, okay. Don. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Anthony. Go ahead, Anthony.
I don't really have a question per se, but it looks to me like things have definitely changed. Like a month ago, I'd go through the hives and I'd have a beautiful picture perfect brood pattern. I had a lot of either nectar or sugar and water stored. I don't know which one it was. Now I see less. And I'm going to say 2 weeks ago, I went through the hive and I was just doing an inspection. Really, I was just making sure everything's okay. I don't see queen cells. And it looked okay. And I wasn't really looking for the queen, but I didn't see her. In these 2 boxes I'm referring to now, both of those queens are marked, so they're very easy to see. So 2 weeks ago, I wasn't really looking for the queen, could have overlooked it. Then I think on Friday, I want to look and see if they're in there. So Friday, I looked well in both boxes, and I don't see either one of the marked queens. I only saw a few larvae. I don't see a big, nice brood pattern. I don't know where those 2 queens are. I don't know what happened, but it's definitely changed over the last month. Now, I don't know here in Thailand if I should be feeding them now, not feeding them now. I am feeding them sugar and water. And they are using it. I don't know if they're drinking it or storing it. They're using it. And I was going to call the bee farm yesterday because these people like you, they've had bees these people are in their 70s and they've had bees for 50 years. Usually I talk to the wife, and I was going to call her yesterday to ask her 2 things about should I be feeding them. And I don't see one cell of capped honey, but yesterday was Mother's Day here in Thailand, so I didn't bother the lady. I'll give her a call tomorrow. And let her, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Am I supposed to be feeding them now, not feeding them now? And one of these hives is 4 months old, and there's not one cell of capped honey, not one.
Then they're not getting enough surplus honey or nectar. You need to keep feeding them till they start storing something. They're going to cap honey. They're going to cap some of your sugar water. If they're not getting no brood and you don't find a queen, I'd be listening to that hive. If it's getting noisy, then you might have, it bumped your queen, or something could have got in there and killed your queen.
And yeah, that could happen because, I still have a hell of a problem with those big hornets that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to peak in September, so I haven't even got to the worst part of that yet. I did find another one of those death head moths in there on Friday when I went in there. 3 out of 4, they've killed it. And that moth is 2 inches long. I showed you guys one, and they must be balling that up and cooking it because
the main thing that I would watch for is you got to be looking for eggs. If you're seeing eggs, you should have a queen in there. Whether you find her, even a marked queen. A lot of people are using a paint marker to mark your paint, the queens. I have seen bees chew that paint off within 3 weeks. Now, if you've got a hive that's noisy, maybe you don't have a queen in there. Being a new beekeeper, sometimes you're moving frames around and you're not paying attention. If you bump her, damage her a little bit, they'll replace her. Now you'll go through a week to 3 weeks where you might not have brood.
Yeah, and I understand I can have, but it's strange that I don't see both of them. And the other times I went in there with the yellow dot on them, they're extremely easy to see, even for an old man like me. But I don't know. I'm gonna talk to the lady tomorrow and get her take on what it's like here in Thailand. What is the time that I should I be feeding and get her take on why I don't even see one cell of capped honey. I see
it might be they consuming. If they're making babies, they're going to consume food. So if there's not enough out there coming in and you're not feeding them much, they're not going to have nothing to store.
No, I'm feeding them. So I'm giving
how much sugar are you poundage wise are you putting on each hive in a week's time?
In a week's time, I'm probably putting 3 to 4 pounds.
Little light.
Yeah.
How you mixing it? 2 or 3 to 1?
I'm mixing 2 to 1.
Okay.
2 to 1, and I'm actually, I make it up ahead of time. And I'm actually not boiling it, but I'm heating it up so that it dissolves well. And then I got plastic jugs I store it in, and I fill up the feeders. So I don't know. It definitely changed inside the box, and right now I don't understand what the hell's going on. But that's Pete, and I'll try to figure it out over the next week after I talk to the lady and I talk to the girl at the university.
It's a learning process.
Oh, I can't ask you guys. I fully understand that. I understand the regional thing, what works in Florida doesn't work in Washington State, and what you're doing isn't going to work for me over here. It's totally regional.
Well, the main thing no matter where you're at, any part of the world, you're going to open a hive up, you're going to see larvae in there. You're going to see eggs, and if the hive is noisy, then more like you don't have a queen. But you open a hive up and it's quiet and you don't see eggs, they might not be bringing enough in to support, a population the queen's not going to lay if there's not enough resources coming in.
I understand that, but they are bringing back a lot of pollen, a lot. I made a video clip the other morning because they were bringing back so much, and not, they're bringing back a lot of pollen, but we have no way of knowing how much nectar they're bringing back except for what we see stored in the cell.
Right.
Well, I don't know. That's where I'm at this week. So I'll let someone else ask a question when we get towards the end. All right, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Okay, Joseph, go ahead.
Just to confirm, Don, you said if you had sales, you would split them as late as October?
I would here, you know, if I had drones. That's, you know, got to have drones. There ain't no need if you got cells out there if you ain't got no drones.
So as late as you got drones, you'll split with sales.
Right.
All right.
There's no point in, you know, if you don't have drones, you can't mate.
Did you say you had a guy that produces, that sells queen cells that you were buying?
I bought some from a fella in Florida. We bought 100 of them. Just to bring in some new stock too.
Is there anybody that you would recommend, or any way you would recommend to find people that are selling those?
Where do you live?
North Carolina, Western North Carolina.
Check. I've got 2 students over there, Jerry Conway and Todd Prince. I don't know if they've got extra cells. They might be grafting yet.
All right. Yeah, Todd. I've got queens from Todd.
Yeah.
I've spent thousands of dollars this year. You know.
Yeah.
Kind of under budget for buying a bunch of queens, but I was hoping to find some queen cells.
Well, the thing is, you want to do the stuff that you can do by learning, you know. I mean, anybody go out and buy a couple 100 packages and throw it in a bee yard and start selling bees, but you've got to learn how to maintain it, how to make your own queens, and how to do your own matings and stuff.
All righty, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, Darlene, go ahead.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah, my muzzle has been taken off. Mr. Don, am I correct? And this is going back to what Anthony was saying, is that when I went through, when I first got my bees 7 weeks ago today, they were taking in the sugar syrup and then they stopped. So I stopped giving them sugar syrup. And then around the same time, over a 2-week period, I noticed they started bringing in more pollen than they ever have, but they weren't doing anything inside the hive. Then I gave them sugar syrup, and it was like a feeding frenzy. And you have always said that if they take it, they need it. If they ignore it, they don't. And that might be what Anthony's looking at, maybe.
Well, if there's enough nectar coming in, they're not even going to want to mess with the sugar syrup. I've had videos out here on buckets, and you can see when honey flow starts and stops. They just won't. They don't want to bother with it.
Right. Yeah. And they didn't, and they stopped bothering with it. So I just started giving them regular water, just straight water. And then I saw these things that were happening. Nothing was happening inside the hive. Still got the bees. Everybody's happy. But they're not doing anything inside the hive. And they've consumed all of the honey that was inside the hive. So I put back, last week I gave them sugar syrup. They sucked it down. And your shoebox one on the inside, they sucked it down within like 4 or 5 hours. And Scott's going, how can they? They're so little. They're so small. How can they suck all that up? I'm like, well, you know, hopefully we've got 30,000 in each hive. But, but that's a test that if you see that you've got a problem, like I said, I thought I was starving mine to death.
It could be.
But now they're happy, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Donald. Go ahead.
Darlene, I had some that, like half my hives that had stopped eating the sugar water, and then the other half kept eating them, you know, so I just kind of offer it to them. If they take it, I give it, and if they don't, then I wait a couple weeks, and, you know, I don't know if that's right or not, but that's the way I do it.
Well, you could have a stand with 10 or 12 hives on it, and, you know, half of them pulling honey and half of them pulling sugar water.
Yeah.
I mean, each one is individual.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of the way it is with mine.
Yeah.
Half my hives will take it and half of them won't. So.
If you're feeding sugar water and they're not taking it and there's nothing in there stored, more than likely you're mixing it too thin and it's starting to ferment. If you start getting fermented sugar water, they're not going to take it. And if they do take it, they're going to get real lazy and lethargic and poop all over the hive and everything else.
Yeah. No, my sugar water it's half and half.
Get it as thick as you can mix it.
Of course, I got the double feeder too, like you made.
Right.
One of them's water and one of them's sugar. So.
Yeah. Those shoe boxes, though, if you got a good strong hive, they'll pull a full shoe box full down in about a day to a day and a half on an average hive.
Yeah.
Because those hold about 1.5 gallons.
Yeah. That's about how fast they go through them whenever they're eating it. So. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Matt. Go ahead.
Hi, Don. I was listening in on Anthony talking about these wasps, and it occurred to me that they're a lot larger than the bees. What are your thoughts on maybe putting like queen excluder material on the front of his hive to keep those wasps out?
Well, the only problem you have with that is, we have done something similar to that in mating yards where you got a lot of queens going out and mating, and then they go back and whenever you put a queen excluder or some type of restriction on there, they seem to clog up bad with drones. And if you're not there attending to them, every other day, getting the drones out, they start to rot in there, and then pretty soon the hive will abscond on you.
Well, he said that these are pretty large wasps. They may be bigger than drones.
But a drone can't get through a queen excluder.
Well, right. But he could possibly use a hardware cloth or something like that and close it up to where those wasps couldn't get in the hive. Possibly.
Yeah, you might use rabbit wire, which is like 1/2-inch squares.
And I guess the question...
Yellow jackets get through that.
Well, yeah, these sound like they're big wasps that he's talking about. So
Especially moths.
Yeah, and those huge moths also. It may be something for him to consider.
Yeah, let me just jump in for a second. I asked them to unmute me. I have a landing board that's probably 4 inches wide there, and the bees would sit out on that landing board, and when the big hornet comes by, it just hovers and bam, it picks one off like a buffet. So I had the sawmill make me some, it's a box probably 3 inches wide, and the whole front of it is a screen. It's big enough for the bees to go in and out. And the screen on both ends of that thing. So I put this over so I can leave both entrances open, and they're getting good ventilation, and they got 2 entrances out here so they can go in and out. But bees don't need an entrance. They don't seem to even like a landing board. They're used to flying right in a hole. So even though I've got 2 3-inch wide entrances down here, when they come out of the hive box, they go straight across, go through the screen, and out. So I do have them protected if they're sitting outside so the hornets can't pick them off. But then there's still 1 inch there, and if they're sitting out there, they pick them off. And they are big. They're 1.5 inches, and the greater ones are almost 2 inches long. They're pretty good size. And they'll peak in September. They'll all die out in November. One queen will last through the time period. It's not really a winter. Will last through the time period, and they'll reemerge next May. And I hope the hell they forget where my house is. Okay, go ahead. But thank you for the point. And I do have the best protection I can give them for right now. Thank you.
Okay, I just thought I'd mention that. I didn't have
no
anything
problem.
else.
Thanks.
Thanks, Don.
Okay, and then Paul had a question here. Wants to know if you're feeding honeybee healthy, will you taste that in the honey when you extract it?
No.
Okay.
I haven't been feeding it. I usually do that early spring just to give them an extra start. But no, even if you feed oils through the whole time period of spring and summer, you're not going to taste it in the honey.
Okay, and that was our last question.
Okay.
It's 9 o'clock if you want to wrap it up.
Okay, everybody, next week, get your question. Don't be bashful. We all going to start somewhere. You don't ask, I can't give you an answer.
Are we going to have a chat next week? I thought you were going to get next week off and then.
Yeah, every other week. Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be 2
Yep.
weeks.
Yep,
And then
it'll
we'll
be 2 weeks.
do
Then you'll have to put up with me again.
Okay, we're going to go through our withdrawal. And
You
So that gives you
After-
more time to get questions.
we will be able to consume upon you on a weekly basis.
Hopefully,
Hopefully. Well,
hopefully.
well, no, that you will be above the ground and we will be able to interact with you.
Let's
along
hope
with
so.
us. Yes,
Let's
sir.
hope so.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, appreciate everybody showing up. Everybody have a good night.